Hello, sweet parents. Welcome to the When Our Adult Children Walk Away podcast. My name is Dr. Janet Steinkamp, and during each episode of When Our Adult Children Walk Away, I will provide my professional and personal insights, information and opportunities for your self-reflection and growth, tips and tricks to make every day count, and encouragement to keep moving forward. I'm here to help you dig deep and get down to the root causes so that you can find your way out of the darkness to a positive and lasting relationship. Grab your notebook and a pen, settle into your favorite chair, and let's get to it. In this episode, we are celebrating our moms. Mother's Day is often a difficult time for moms when we have an estranged adult child or a relationship that isn't going so well, and we can feel ourselves falling away from our adult child. So we want to take a few minutes here and really focus on the relationship between the mom and the adult child who's not in a great place with us. We are going to look at 10 reasons why our adult children tell us through research why they hold us accountable, why they are likely to estrange us, why they're likely to feel anger and express that anger toward us, and they're inclined to accuse us of being responsible for the estrangement. I'm also going to share with you some examples of how the accusation might sound, so you know what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to make a suggestion of how you might respond to that accusation in a way that brings things closer together, that does not force them away further, that does not increase the estrangement. So let's start with number one. The first reason why our adult children tell us that we are the problem is our emotional enmeshment and our overbearing involvement or behavior in their lives. This is actually a very common theme that I hear from many, many, many mothers that I talk to and work with. To boil that down a little bit, mothers are often seen as the primary caregivers in our society. We're often, even if we're working full-time, and our spouse is as well, or we're a full-time single mom, we are also the primary caretaker. Because we're so much more invested, maybe not invested, that's maybe not the right word, but involved with our children as they're growing up, we are seen as the predominant parent, and the boundaries get blurry. So as our children grow, when they're little tiny, of course they need us to be involved as we can be, making sure that they get enough to eat, they're clean, they have a place to sleep that's safe. We, over time, needed to, if we didn't, and continued to need to, pull away. So by enmeshment, we think of two people who are involved in each other's lives, but there's a blurred line between their individual person. So the mom does not end where the child begins. They kind of dovetail. We need to make sure we are not dovetailing with our adult child in their life. We need to separate ourselves, have our own life. And yes, we have our own friends, we have our own activities. Is our language recognizing the separation? Is our investment and involvement in their thinking and their decision-making separate? Do we recognize that they no longer need us to be involved in their decision-making? And yes, of course, we might make decisions with more information. We may make a decision that has a more constructive or positive outcome. It's their choice. They don't need us or want us to be involved that much. Often what has happened is that as our children grow toward that 18 to 20-year-old stage where they're starting to really need to be independent of us, we don't change our parenting. I did not change my parenting. I did not mature as a parent in my style as they matured as adults. So I continued to parent my child into her late 20s as I did when she was 18. And she didn't need it. She didn't want it. It wasn't necessary. It was actually disrespectful. It negated everything she was working toward. So of course that ends in a place where our adult children resent us, where they're angry at us. They don't want us that close. So if we want to be in their lives, we need to learn how to disengage. They end up feeling like their autonomy isn't respected. They end up feeling like we don't want them to separate from us. We don't think they can. So here's what the accusation might sound like. You've always inserted yourself into my life. You always wanted to know what was going on, who my friends were. And you made me feel like I couldn't even make a decision on my own. I didn't get to even choose my prom dress. I didn't get to choose what cleats I had for an athletic event or a sport. I didn't get to choose what books I read. You always had an opinion. So here's a response that might be helpful. I hear you. I hear that you felt I was too involved. I actually can see where I was too involved. I get what you're saying. And I want to respect your space now. How would you like me to support you differently? Do you have some ideas or suggestions for me? And then listen. Stop and listen. Take it in. Don't respond immediately. Don't defend or explain. Maybe ask clarifying questions. Tell me more about that. I'm curious to know what that would look like. How would you recommend I ask questions differently in a way that would not communicate? How could I ask questions in a way? How can I ask questions that respect you and also help me understand? So you see the difference between explaining, well, I was afraid. Well, I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. Well, whatever, an explanation for why we were over-involved. And there were times we were over-involved. That's the kernel of truth. Maybe it wasn't even predominant. The child, our adult child, felt it and is clinging on to that. How can we help stop that and move forward in a way that that's not predominant in our relationship? That's number one. Number two, perceived favoritism of a sibling. It doesn't matter if you had one child or many children. If there's a perception that there's at least one other child who is the favorite, in reverse, what it means is they were not your favorite. They were not as worthy. They were not as desirable. Something about them was not as favorable as this other child. Now, you may not have recognized it happened. You may not have felt it. You may actually claim it and have made that proclamation. I have a very good friend who takes great pride in the fact that her daughter is her favorite child. She will say to anybody who listens, well, my daughter is my favorite, so you know how that goes. Now, she is not interpreting it as it might sound to others, and maybe not to her other children. We need to look back and consider, was there a favorite? Did I spend more time with one of my children over the other? And why was that? Sometimes we do it because we just have more in common with the other child. Their temperament is more palatable to us. They are, I can think of times that I had one child that was a whole lot less work than the other one. And there were times that they flipped. The other one ended up being more work. They traded places. We need to look at that and think about why that was, or if it was, and where that perception may be coming from. So the accusation may sound something like, you always loved my brother more than me. You always made me feel invisible. Anytime he was around, it's like I wasn't even in the room. And a response from you might be something like, I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry that my actions left you feeling that way. I never wanted to hurt you or make you feel like you were less important or less valued. I just didn't intend that, and I'm so sorry that it happened. I understand how my behavior hurt you, and I'd like to understand your experiences better. I'd like to understand how I can make sure that doesn't happen anymore. And then listen. What you want to avoid here is I'm sorry I made you feel like that. I'm sorry my behavior made you feel that way. Those are not apologies. They're not open-ended. They're discounting statements. We can use those statements and not even know we're saying it. So pay attention. The key here is that you are sorry for what happened. You are sorry for how your behavior left them feeling hurt and invisible. You never wanted them to feel hurt and invisible. Your behavior caused that. Own it. Apologize for it. And then ask to understand more. Okay, number 3, criticism and high expectations. So how were we critical in a way that was destructive to them? And how did our high expectations for them leave a mark, a negative mark? So why do we hear this from our children? Some mothers unintentionally project their own fears and dreams onto their children. We see things that we didn't have when we were growing up, and we're darn sure that we're going to make sure our children have it, that they're going to learn how to behave, that they're going to learn how to be the best in their class, best athlete, best. Our expectations lead to insecurity when they're extreme, and we use criticism to guide people to meet these expectations. They leave our children feeling insecure, not enough, that nothing they do is good enough. So an accusation might sound like, you were never happy with anything I did, no matter how hard I tried. I was never enough. You were never satisfied. That might be the accusation. So a response might be something like, I see now how my words made you feel unappreciated. I hear you, and I regret it deeply. That was not my intention, and I did it. I know that I hurt you. You were more than enough, and you are more than enough now, and I'd love to celebrate you today, and I'd love to celebrate you for who you are today, period. Watch how it lands, listen for a response, and respond with an open heart and an open mind. Number 4, dismissal of childhood pain and experiences. Now, I know as a mom, we do not intend to dismiss our children's feelings and dismiss their pain or their experience. I understand that we were moving when they were being raised at such a speed, such a fast pace, that oftentimes we didn't slow down enough, take a minute, look our child in the eyes and say, tell me more about that. It sounds like that was really hurtful. That was an awful thing someone said to you. You deserve better. Sometimes we made the assumption that our child did something wrong. Well, what did you do to them? Did you say something? Did you do something? Those comments insinuate that we don't trust that our child wasn't the initiator of the problem, and as a result, didn't deserve the treatment. Now, that may not be at all what we intended to say or what we believed. It is, however, what our child heard. That's what they're telling us. That's how that landed for them. So it may be that conversations led to arguments, we became critical and defensive, and that the child, they had no choice but to just be silent, to just listen to us. That silence could have looked to us like acceptance. The silence may more likely have been giving up, just letting us run our mouths out, get everything out, and then they could walk away, just trying to get us to be quiet, to appease us. Parents who don't listen but only defend themselves push the adult child away. By defending ourselves, we are basically saying your story is not accurate, what you're saying is not what happened, what you perceived was not true, and for every individual, we get to have our own perception, our own truth, our own story. We get to have that interpretation. So the accusation might sound like, every time I tried to talk to you, it turned into a fight, so I stopped trying. Every time I tried to bring a problem to you, you brushed it away. You told me it wasn't a big deal. You told me to get over it. I know there's such a balancing point between when a child falls down and skins their knee, hugging them, holding them, wiping the knee clean, putting a Band-Aid on, and encouraging them to go on, and not coddling, right? We want to acknowledge the pain, take care of the hurt, let them know we care and we're there for them, and not over-exaggerate the problem, not make too big a deal out of it. So when I was raising my children, there was this concept of act as if, the act as if approach. So if a child falls, skins their knee, and stands up crying, we act as if it's not a big deal. Oh, sweetie, it's not that big a deal. You're going to be fine. Yes, there's a little blood. Let's put a Band-Aid on it. Get back out there. You can see where that would easily move into your issue, your pain, your feelings, your embarrassment are not that big a deal. That the child could be left with that. So how we navigated that was critical to how our children understood our dismissal or perceived dismissal of their pain and their experiences. Number 5, failure to support during key life events. I hear this a lot. And I think this one is actually fairly simple to understand. What happens to us as moms, as the primary caretaker, is that we end up being responsible for management, family management, events, all the scheduling, carpool, you name it. We are responsible for the management of the family, predominantly. That's not to discount fathers. So why does that happen? Well, because we weren't. Why does that happen? Because in many ways we weren't there for them emotionally or physically even during those really important times. So let's just define an important time. So let's say it would be a graduation, a wedding, a birth, a grandchild. Maybe in your culture there are other events and life accomplishments that you had to plan around. And so you were busy getting all that done, and your child was kind of standing in the corner, and the child, even as a young adult, is left feeling that lack of emotional connection. That's not to say we don't try. We may try at the end of dinner while we're cleaning up the dishes to engage in conversation. And I am a great proponent of trying to talk and have conversations when you're actively engaged in something like washing dishes or raking the yard or whatever it is, sitting, and maybe you do needlework or puzzle. We do a lot of puzzles in our family, so that's a great time for us to talk. It's also a great time for quiet time. So not everybody wants to talk during those times. And if we limit the number of opportunities we have to grab that chance to have an emotional connection, we are at a disadvantage to begin with because they're already mad we weren't really paying much attention to them. It feels to them that the whole event is about us because we're at the center of it all. And there isn't a lot, at least in my experience, looking back there in my generation, there wasn't a lot of engagement in the adult child at the time, the young adult or growing child. There wasn't a lot of engagement with them over the process. Just as an example, I chose a photographer for senior pictures based on what the other moms were talking about. I didn't ask my daughter. I didn't ask my son. I set up the appointment. I worked it around track meets and social events, and they went when I told them they needed to go. Wednesday, you've got to be at the photographer's place by, whatever the time was. So I would tell them when they needed to be at a place and where the place was. I didn't ask them. And I don't know, looking back, if that would have made a difference or not. Those are the things I can see and I can own. So the accusation might sound something like, "You weren't there when I needed you the most, Mom. You weren't. It showed me that I couldn't count on you." So a response might be that is open and will not cause any more damage or hurt. A response could be something like, "I really regret not being there for you. I know when I look back now that I was just so busy. I didn't have to be that busy. I could have spent more time with you listening and learning more about how you were feeling, what you were thinking about, and what was going on for you. I'm just really sorry about that. I missed out. And I know that you missed out. I know that meant you missed out on an emotional connection that would have been very supportive to you. And as a mom, I was responsible for that. I want to be present with you now. I want to be present moving forward. Help me find ways that are meaningful to you so I can understand how to support you moving forward." So no defense, no explanation, accountability, taking responsibility for what you could have done differently. And if you hit the mark, you'll know it immediately. This to me is one of the easiest ones to look back at and say, wow, I really was way more worried about the color of the tablecloth at the wedding than I was about how she was feeling or how he was feeling. And it mattered. It made an impression on them. Even when we're doing our best, doing everything we think we're supposed to be doing, and everything that we see the people around us doing, we can fall short. We did the best we could in those circumstances with what we knew then. I believe it. There was no intention to cause harm. And now, looking back, we can learn something about ourselves. We can learn something about our friends and our priorities and how we might want to do things differently moving forward. So number 6, unhealthy conflict patterns and communication breakdowns. Not so easy. This one is not so easy to see or understand. Why does it happen? It might be that our conversations often led to arguments, or we became critical, we sided with other people, with other people's children, we became defensive, or we pushed them into a corner where they became defensive. And when those things happen, the argument, the criticism, the defensiveness, communication is no longer effective. Communication has broken down. Our best bet in those moments is to stop. Stop, calm ourselves, give ourselves a timeout, and agree to come back later and revisit it. What might have happened in those times is that our child became quiet. They became resigned. They became what looked like to us as accepting, when in fact, when they put their head down, it may not have been acceptance. It may have been an attempt to get us to de-escalate, to disengage, to stop the criticism. Sometimes when we don't listen, but only defend ourselves or the other person involved in the conversation, the child just pushes further away. And that doesn't stop as they move into adulthood. As a matter of fact, it accelerates. So defending ourselves, though it feels like the right thing to do, and we should be able to defend ourselves, in those moments, our best friend is listening. Maybe asking some clarifying questions. Tell me more about that. Not quite sure I understand that. Say more. It isn't to defend or explain. It's simply to listen. You've given me a lot here to think about, and I want to take this in and think about it. I want to really give this some thought. Can we come back in a week and talk about it more? Can I give you a call later this week when it's convenient for you so we can talk more? Disengage, listen, take it with you, and think about it. So the mom's response might be something like, I don't want you to feel unheard. I don't want to miss what you're telling me. I'm really working on listening better and listening to learn more about you without defending myself. I want to understand, not argue. Moving forward, can we come to some agreement about how you would like me to listen differently and when I can share more information that would be helpful? And then stop. Listen to what they have to say and engage in a constructive conversation. If not, then when the opportunity presents itself. So number 7, overstepping boundaries in adulthood. So this isn't necessarily when they were children being raised. This is during adulthood. So here's some reasons why this might happen. Sometimes we struggle with our adult children and their independence. We want them to need us. We are not done being needed. Nobody told me that when my children became adults, they wouldn't need me. Nobody told me that. But they don't. They want me and they engage with me. They want a relationship with me. They didn't always. They do now. It was hard work to get here. And the first thing I had to do was accept the fact that they did not need me. They could walk away. And yours may have. That might be why you're listening now. So accepting that they don't need us is the first step. What actually happens when we start to accept that fact is that there's a little bit of relief. The fact that they don't need us gives us permission to be in their lives differently, in positive and constructive and appreciated ways. If they give us a boundary, don't call us between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., that's our family time, we need to not call them between 5 and 7 p.m. Now, it may be there's an exception to that. It may be that there's a death in the family and we have to call them during that time. I'm simply suggesting that we really consider whether we have to call them between 5 and 7. If that's the boundary, we need to do everything in our power to honor that. That is how our adult children begin to understand that we respect their boundaries. We respect and acknowledge that they get to control their lives and they get to say how and when we're involved in their life, just like we get to say how and when they're involved in our life. They may choose not to accept it either. They may choose to walk away. So here's an example of what an accusation might sound like. You've never respected my decisions. You always had to have the last word. You always had a comment about my decision. Well, if you think that's the best thing, well, have you done all of your homework? You always question me and my decisions. So a response could be something like, yep, I see now that I gave you a lot of advice when you didn't want it. I get it. I know it. I take responsibility for that. I will respect your choices moving forward. And if I fall back into bad habits, please say something. I want to hear you. I want to change these behaviors. Acknowledge the fact that we are not perfect. What can happen is if we make that promise, I will respect your choices moving forward. We also have to know that we are not perfect. We will make mistakes. And as we become better at this, our children become more forgiving about the mistakes because they understand the humanity of it. They may be, at this point in your story, so angry and so disengaged that this problem will need a different approach for a very long time. Generally speaking, when we have an opportunity to talk and try to make amends for some of our mistakes, these kinds of hints and responses can be very helpful. Number 8, emotional unavailability or coldness, where we were not emotionally available to them. We kind of talked about that when we talked about not being available or present during the major events in life. But we're not talking now about the later years. We're talking about all through childhood. So why does this happen? Well, sometimes we just are emotionally distant. I was raised in a very Germanic family. Many of you are raised in different cultures where expressing emotion was not the norm when our children were growing up. It was not how we were taught to be with people. In today's context, in today's world, emotional connection is at the forefront of how people parent. I watch my kids now and how they really listen to people. They have this term, there's this term, I kind of love it. You have some really big feelings. I hear you have some really big feelings right now. I love that. Of course they're big feelings, especially when we're just children and learning to regulate ourselves. We're not that good as adults at regulating ourselves sometimes. So the accusation may sound like, you were never emotionally there for me. I needed you to be my mom, and who actually cared. I just wanted you to say things that a mom would say. I wanted you to be there like a mom would be there. If I had a quarter for every time I heard that, I would be a rich woman. So here's a response that might work for you. And it has worked for me. I deeply regret not expressing my love for you in ways that you needed, in ways that you could hear me. I did not know how to do that well, and I missed the mark. I do want to know now how I can show you how I love you. I do want to know ways that I can show you now how much I love you and how much I appreciate you and how much I care. I know I can't go back and change the past, and I want to do better. You might even ask for forgiveness. I know I did not express how much I loved you as when you were growing up as I needed to. I get that. I hear you. And I'm so, so sorry. Can you forgive me? You can ask for forgiveness. I want to do better moving forward. You can make that request. So number 9, toxic or abusive dynamics in the household. Now, it may be that simple. There may have been abusive or destructive elements in the house that we didn't take care of, that you weren't able in that time to take care of. Maybe you were in a destructive relationship for a period of time because you couldn't get out, and the first exit ramp you found, you got out, but it took you a while. It's okay to acknowledge that. I talked to a mom the other day who was saying that she knew things weren't good, and she chose to stay in the relationship until the children were ready to leave home. Whatever that was for her, I don't really recall. She made that choice. And then as the children got older, they asked questions about that. Why didn't you get out sooner? Or another time, a mom chose to stay after the children were gone, and the children were perplexed by that. Well, you said you were going to get out when we weren't in the house anymore, and yet you chose to stay. Why is that? Why are you so dependent on this person that you can't get out? Well, that might not be the reason. I don't know the reason, but those kinds of conversations are important to have. So the accusation may sound something like, You let Dad treat you so horribly, and he treated us so badly, and you never stood up for us. You never kicked him out. Why didn't you do something? Fair questions, and not easy answers. They're not easily answered. It takes a lot of self-acknowledgement and self-reflection to even understand that for ourselves, much less explain it to our children. A response might be something like, I really regret it. I really regret not protecting you better. I thought I was. I obviously was not. And I can't change the past. I can't go back and change that now. I hope you can forgive me for that. I hope you can understand as we start talking about this more. And I want to acknowledge the pain that it caused you. I want to own that my lack of action caused you hurt and pain. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. And stop. No explanation in that moment. Listen to the episode on the difference between explanations and apologies. Last of the 10 reasons our adult children tell us that they push away or walk away from us. And that is the lack of accountability and the unwillingness to change. That is difficult. It is a difficult accusation because that is real time. That's right now. When they make that statement, they are talking about in real time. Our choice now not to take accountability for our contributions to the problem and our unwillingness to change. If this is an accusation that you hear, this is very important. It's critical to you being able to heal and open up communication channels that are healthy and trust-based. This is critical. This comes from our inability to acknowledge that we had anything to do with the problem. And I'm not suggesting that we were abusive, that we traumatized our children. I'm not suggesting that some of their perceptions are in alignment with our perception. I am suggesting that if there is a kernel of truth in there, if there is an element of what they're saying that, yep, that's what we did, that's what we said, and yep, now we understand that did not land as we wanted, we need to own it, acknowledge it, and apologize for it. If there are things, when there are things, and there probably are things, that we can acknowledge happened, but we were not responsible for, we don't have to apologize falsely. We can make amends. We can take accountability for our lack of understanding at the time and the fact that something we did or were a part of caused them to hurt. It may not have been fully our responsibility or something we could control. We can still say we are so sorry that they were hurt by it. That is making amends. So the accusation might sound like, you always act like you did nothing wrong. That's why I can't talk to you. I refuse to talk to you until you take responsibility for what you did and apologize. And now, often they will tell us to apologize in the way they need to be apologized for. Follow their rules. So the first thing there is to figure out what the rules are, right? What does an apology sound like and look like and feel like to our adult children? Our response might be something like, I accept that I had a role in our struggles. I do. I acknowledge that. If it's a relationship and there are two people, we both bring things to the party, right? So I know I had responsibilities in it. I want to take accountability and work toward a healthier relationship at your pace. Please help me understand what an apology sounds like to you. I want to take some time and listen to what you've been telling me. Consider the things I've not been hearing from you. Really take that on board and dig into it. And I need some time to do that. And I give you my word. I do want to be accountable to myself and held accountable by you. I want to know my missteps and the ways that I contributed to the problems. And I will take responsibility for those things. And I want to do differently moving forward. I know this is a process. It won't be fast. And I'm all in. Those are the kinds of things they want to hear from us. They don't want to hear that we know it all, that we get it all, right? Because we're not know-it-alls. That's a problem. We want to be able to simmer it down, sort through the details, and figure out what they've been trying to tell us. So we can look it in the eye take accountability, and make amends. Where there are places we need to apologize, we apologize. This was a big episode. This is a lot to take in and a lot to take on. And moms, I want you to hear me when I say we did our best. We did what we could with what we knew and what we had available to us. Today, our parenting is being looked at through a different lens. It's being looked at through a different tolerance and understanding of the parenting techniques we were told were right. You know, I was raised during the Dr. Spock years, and you probably were too. We all as a generation look back and say, well, I wish they hadn't done that. Now our adult children are doing that with us. Trauma when we were raising our children is different than what trauma is now. We have to understand it differently. I appreciate you listening to this and taking it on board. I hope it was helpful. I do want you to know I'm offering a class in April, I believe it is, on this very same topic, 2 hours, so we can, in a small group, limited seating of 12, in a small group, dig into this more deeply in your own circumstances. So you don't have to divulge your whole story. You don't have to tell the whole story to everyone. This is a time to say, tell me more about that. What would it look like if the accusation were ABC? This is what I've been accused of. How might I respond to that? How can I understand that differently? So I really want to encourage you, go out there and get registered for that class. If it fills up quickly, I'll add another section. And I hope to see you there. I think it's really going to be a good conversation. So again, happy Mother's Day. Thank you for joining me. Run over to the website, take a look at what other services are over there, and know that you are not alone. Be brave in this. Hold on to the fact that we are here with you.